here to talk about a challenge that probably most of you face in your day-to-day business, and that's the challenge of finding great and well-trained spa management personnel. And at last year's summit, in the delegate survey, you as a group said that you believe that training and education are the #1 challenge facing today's spa industry. And you also said that a lack of professional human resources is the #1 obstacle for growth in your own businesses. According to the online survey that we ran for this study, 95% of you said that you have problems finding great spa managers and directors with the right qualifications, skills, and experience. And about half of you said that these problems you think will stay the same or get worse over the next 10 years. So why are these problems so important and critical for the industry? Well, of course, as you all know, you're experts on this, but spa is fundamentally about the experiences, the human touch, and the service that you provide to your customers. So in order to be innovative and be competitive in the marketplace, your people and your employees and your business are really your #1 asset. I want to emphasize just up front that the challenges that you're facing with management personnel are not something unique to the spa industry. As you probably know, the economy in many, many parts of the world has really fundamentally shifted from manufacturing-based to services and knowledge and innovation industries over the last few decades. So along with that change, there's really been a fundamental shift in the nature of competitive advantage. Today, having talented and innovative employees and having a strong organizational culture are really the most critical competitive success factor across many industries, including spa. But at the same time, many businesses and many industries are finding that it's increasingly hard to hire and retain great employees, and especially at the management level. This is caused by a lot of factors, and I think Elizabeth in her talk yesterday at lunch talked on many of these labor force trends that are driving this. But things like demographic changes, the fact that it's easier for people to change jobs now, and people do it more frequently, and the fact that today's jobs simply require a much higher skill level than jobs did for previous generations. All of those are driving these challenges. So economists have actually been talking about this labor force challenge for the last couple of decades. And about 10 to 15 years ago, actually, McKinsey did a lot of great research on this topic, and they actually labeled this challenge the war for talent. And so many of you may think that that's a good descriptor of what you're facing with your workforce challenges. So what needs to be done to address this problem? Who's responsible for addressing the problems with spa management? Just think to yourselves, is it the school's responsibility to go out and change their approach and their curriculum? Is it the employee's job that if they don't have the right skills, they should just go get better training? Or is it the spa business's responsibility to fix their employees' weaknesses? This is not meant to be a trick question, but the correct answer is all of the above. All of these groups, the schools, the employees, the businesses, everyone needs to be responsible for working together to make sure that skilled and competent spa managers are available for the industry. So really one of the most important takeaways that I hope you remember from this study and this presentation is that workforce development depends on partnership, systems, and networks. Everybody needs to be taking a more proactive and partnership-based approach for developing a strong spa management workforce, and really for developing a strong workforce for the industry at all levels of jobs. So schools and training companies need to make sure that they're offering industry-relevant curriculum and lots of opportunities for hands-on and practical training. Spa businesses need to do a better job communicating and partnering with schools, and also making sure that you're offering strong human resource development and training opportunities for your employees. And meanwhile, if you're a person who's working in spa management or interested in spa management, you need to make sure that you're going out and seeking the appropriate education and training and credentials at the appropriate points in your career, and then bringing this knowledge to your job. So what I'd like to do now with the rest of this presentation is just focus a little bit on each of these 3 key components in the workforce system, talk about kind of the current state of affairs, some of the important challenges facing these groups, and then I'll wrap up with some suggestions about ways that we can work on making the system work better, work more closely together to address some of these problems. So first, to start out with the situation for people actually working in spa management, I just want to emphasize up front something that anyone who's worked in spa management knows firsthand, but that's that being a spa manager is truly a very difficult job, and in many ways it can be more difficult than being a manager in other types of industries. There are a number of key attributes and qualities that are really needed to be a very great spa manager or director. The first is that spa managers really need to have a foot in the door of the spa world and a foot in the door of the business world. You have to embrace and be passionate about the spa lifestyle, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to run a good and profitable business and be a good business manager. This is a very tough combination of qualities because in a lot of ways, these two pieces are kind of incompatible. It's kind of a right brain, left brain dichotomy. So it can be challenging to find someone that has both of these. Second, great communications and interpersonal skills are probably much more important for managers in the spa industry than in other industries. Being a great spa manager is almost like being an entrepreneur and running your own business more than being sort of a middle management type position. This is especially true in the day spa world, where a lot of the managers are, in fact, the owners of the business. And then fourth, spa management, as you know, is a very demanding career, very long work days and long work weeks. And as you move up, you need geographic mobility, a lot of travel. So it's a career that can easily lead to burnout. It may not necessarily be family friendly and that kind of lifestyle. Another key challenge for spa managers is there's really no sort of tried and true or typical route for entering a spa management career like there is in many other industries. So the pathways that people take into spa management jobs are literally all over the place. And because of that, the types of education and training that people receive and the points in their careers when they receive it are also all over the place and incredibly fragmented. And this is really a huge factor contributing to the skills gaps that people are experiencing with their spa managers. I wanted to put up here a simplified, but not that simple, a little graphic showing kind of the typical career pathways for people into spa management. But really there are two primary routes that spa businesses use to hire managers. The first is, of course, to promote people upward from within the spa, often from a therapist position or from other lower level positions. Of course, the second being, looking outside the spa when needed to hire someone. This could be from another spa. It could be straight out of a school or degree program, which may or may not actually be related to spa, or it could even be from another industry. But really the types of training that people are going to have received and the education they will have received really depends on which route they're coming through into the management jobs. But sort of generally what we hear is that people coming into management jobs from that first route would typically have that sort of heart and that passion for spa, but probably lack any kind of training in business and management skills. People coming through the second route are often the opposite. They may have business and management training and skills, but a lot of times they lack that experience and that in-depth understanding of spa. So just to move through, of course, once you move into a management job, you kind of move up through the ranks, the different levels. One thing I want to point out with this is that the use of these job titles that I'm listing here is incredibly inconsistent in the industry. And what I'm showing on the screen is the most typical use of the titles. But there are lots of spas out there, and I'm sure many of your businesses use these terms differently. And we actually found in our surveys that sometimes these job titles are actually used differently by spas in the same international chain. So it can be a little bit confusing. But just moving upward then beyond management jobs poses another challenge because, of course, there are fewer and fewer senior level positions out there. If you want to look at moving into management positions in hotel and hospitality, moving into spa consulting, opening your own business, all of those routes have their own challenges. So this can be tough for people looking at the long-term career pathways in management. We actually hear anecdotally that a lot of people actually stay in spa management jobs for a very long time and that turnover is actually lower in those positions than in other lower level positions in the spa. And then we also hear that a lot of people end up leaving the industry when they can't find jobs to move into beyond the spa manager roles. And just quickly, a third major challenge for spa management is that it really does require a huge range of skills, both hard skills and soft skills. Generally, it would be impossible for a person to possess all of these skills without having both significant education and training and also having a lot of experience and mentoring in the spa industry. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, the typical pathways into spa management mean that people generally lack one of those two elements, either the education and training or the experience. So on the screen, this is just a graphic we tried to put together for the report to kind of summarize those key skills for spa managers. I don't want to talk a lot about this, but basically we tried to condense and summarize a lot of skill sets here, and we still ended up with 20 things on this list. And actually, I wanted to say that iSpa has done a lot of great work in this area, and they've put together what they call a body of knowledge for spa management personnel. It's much more detailed than this. We included it actually at the end of our report, so I encourage you to look at it. But that document is about 8 to 10 pages long and has over 300 items on it. So really the point I'm trying to make is the required skill set is massive and complex for managers in the spa industry. So according to the surveys and interviews our research team did, the #1 complaint that the industry has about spa managers is that they're lacking the strong management, finance, and business skills. And we actually asked both industry leaders and spa managers themselves about their training needs and gaps. And interestingly, the responses were very similar across both groups. And they really emphasized those gaps in the hard skills areas. So the top gaps that both groups said exist are strategic planning, IT skills, public relations and promotion, revenue management, legal and regulatory compliance, and financial management and accounting. So, as schools and companies and spa businesses and training providers all think about how to improve training in the future for managers, those would definitely be areas for you to focus on. So now to move on to the next key player in the workforce system, the schools and the training providers. Before I jump into this, I want to be a little bit more specific about what I'm talking about here, because really there are two different types of training and education that people would typically receive during their career pathway. The first is a degree or educational credential, something like an associate's or foundation degree, a bachelor's, master's, something that would be offered usually by a university, college, or technical school. Of course, usually people earn these types of degrees before they enter the workforce, although that's not always the case, but it is harder to go back and get a degree like this after you're already in your career. And of course, usually people would pay for this type of education themselves. The second category is what we call continuing education and on-the-job training. This is training that people get when they're already in their career and already working in a job. It can be offered through a lot of different routes. Sometimes it's done by someone's employer, by an outside training company, an industry association, and there are even schools and universities out there that have programs that specialize on continuing ed for people in the workforce. Sometimes people will get sort of a certificate or a credential from this training, but it wouldn't necessarily be a degree. And sometimes this training is paid for by the person themselves. Sometimes it's paid for by their employer. But my sense from talking to people is there's some confusion in the spa industry about these different types of education and training and who provides them and the roles that they play. So I just wanted to emphasize up front this distinction. And really more importantly than that, I wanted to emphasize that all of these types of training are essential for building a strong workforce pipeline for spa management. There's not one single best educational program or degree or credential out there that everybody needs to get, because really everyone, depending on their background, needs different types of education and training at different points in their careers. So all of these are important pieces of the puzzle. So now to take a quick look at the universities and schools that offer degree programs related to spa management. That's that first category of education I talked about. We counted up about 64 programs or schools worldwide that are offering spa management related training. And you can see on the map the distribution. Most of them are located in the United States and Europe. Most of these programs are either bachelor's level or what we call associate's or foundation degree, a 2-year degree level. There are a few other degrees and a few master's degree programs out there. What we're including in this count are 3 different types of spa management degrees. The first is what we call pure spa management. This would have a curriculum that's entirely focused on preparing someone for a career in spa management. There are about 27 of these programs. Second, we included hotel, hospitality, tourism management programs that have some kind of spa component within them. That might be a formalized concentration in spa management, or it could just be a few elective courses. But we counted about 22 schools offering these types of programs, but only about 10 of those actually have a formalized concentration in spa management as part of the degree. And then we're also including here increasing number of spa therapy programs that are offering spa management training as part of their curriculum. There are about 16 of these programs that we were able to count, but I think there are probably more out there. Some of these kind of have an even split in the curriculum between therapy and management, and then some of these are really fundamentally therapy programs that include a few short management courses or modules. But this is a really important development because so many of the people coming into spa management start out with that therapy background. This is a place to get that foundation of skills. Just a few other things I wanted to highlight about the degree programs out there. First, all of these are incredibly new programs. Most of them started in the last 5 to 6 years. There are maybe 3 or 4 schools that have been around for more like 8 to 10 years or more. These programs are very small. Most of them have maybe between 10 to 40 students enrolled in the spa management degree. There are maybe 4 or 5 schools that are more in the range of 100 students enrolled. Tuition rates vary widely for these programs. It could be anywhere from $1,000 to $100,000 a year to enroll in one of these degree programs. And lastly, but very importantly, very few people in the spa industry actually know anything about these schools and these programs. We asked people in surveys and interviews to name schools that actually provide spa management education. Only about 20% of you were able to name one school. And among those people, almost all of you probably came up with about 3 specific schools consistently, and none of the rest of these. So most of you are probably surprised that there are 64 of these schools out there, but honestly, it's not surprising since these are so small and so new. Probably none of you have actually hired a graduate from these programs. So, if you haven't hired someone or seen someone coming out of the program, how would you know about them? And again, just to emphasize the smallness of these programs, we've estimated that there are somewhere between 130 and 180,000 people currently working in spa management positions in the industry. And of course, that number continues to grow as the industry grows. But as a comparison, we estimate that there are only about 4,000 students enrolled in all the spa management degree programs we counted around the world. So clearly, the number of people actually receiving degrees that are preparing them for spa management careers is nowhere near the number of people that the industry needs to hire into these type of positions. And just another quick statistic to illustrate this, in the online survey, we surveyed just under 500 spa managers and directors. And among that group, only 4% of them said that they have a spa management degree. So that's about 20 people out of 500 that have this type of degree. So this gap is very, very much related to the skills gap that you as an industry are facing with spa managers, and especially, again, those gaps with hard skills and business management skills, because there just aren't enough people coming out of programs that are specifically preparing with them with those skills for spa management. So now to take a look at the continuing education providers. Again, this is training that people, or sort of caters to people who are already in their careers, already on the job. So the clientele for this type of training would be possibly people who are already spa managers and directors who want to upgrade their skills. It might be spa therapists or lower level spa employees who are interested in moving up in their careers into management. And sometimes these also cater to people who want to change careers and move into the spa industry. But we counted about 41 continuing education providers around the world. I think there are more out there. It can be hard to find these if they don't have a good web presence. But these include private training companies. They include consulting firms that do training, industry associations, and even a handful of universities and colleges. As you can see on the map, most of these providers are in North America and Asia, to a lesser extent in Europe. A couple other things I wanted to highlight about continuing ed. First, like the spa industry, this is a pretty new market. Most of the providers of continuing education are relatively new. Their programs are still evolving and changing a lot, and there's also a lot of turnover in these training providers. And they're experiencing sort of a lot of trial and error and figuring out what kinds of training programs work best. Lately, a lot of the trainers seem to be moving more toward online models or hybrid online and face-to-face models for training because they're finding that these are much more effective and attractive for people who are already on the job. And really the biggest challenge for continuing education is to be able to provide meaningful training and in-depth training within the very limited time and resources that people in the workforce have to spend on training. because it's very hard to take time away from your job to attend training, especially if you have to pay for that training yourself. And because the continuing education providers are so diverse and are constantly in flux, it can be really difficult for businesses and for you as an industry to judge the value or the merit of the programs and the skills that are being taught through those training programs. Just as an example, a lot of these training programs offer some kind of certificate or credential, but there's no consistency in this. So you might earn a certificate from a 2-day course. You could earn a certificate from a year-long part-time program. So it's really impossible to judge as a business the meaning of those credentials other than through word-of-mouth reputation for the programs. One way some industries address this challenge is through what we call industry credentialing. This is where an industry association or some kind of independent body establishes learning modules and skill sets and exams and certificates that become recognized throughout the industry as a standard for what people in the profession need to learn. The spa industry actually already has this type of credentialing, but it's for the therapist level and technical skills, things like massage and aesthetics. But to date, there hasn't been much of this in the spa industry at the management level. But the first step has been made in this direction by efforts by iSpa. And they've been working with the American Hotel and Lodging Educational Institute to develop, first they did a certified spa supervisor certificate, and they've also developed an additional spa management certification. And this is based on a lot of training modules and resources that they've developed. So if you're not familiar with these, I would encourage you to look them up online or read about them in our report. But I mention this because when we talk to people in the industry, there is a lot of interest, it seems, among you, in developing some kind of industry standard certificates and credentials for spa management. But there is a sense that it's very difficult to do this because the skill sets at the management level can be kind of fuzzy. It's hard to develop something that's very international in scope. But I wanted to mention that there are strong precedents out there for doing management level credentialing. I think the American Hotel Lodging Educational Institute is possibly the best example of this for you. They've been at this for 3 to 4 decades. It takes a long time to develop these, but they have hospitality management certifications that are really a gold standard in the industry and that are widely accepted by international chains. So those are the types of models you may want to look into as an industry if you think about this. I want to now jump to that third key player in the workforce system, and that's the spa businesses in the industry. And I want to say that the continuing education, which I just talked about, is most effective when it's not something that people have to seek out on their own, but rather when it's integrated into their jobs and into their professional lives and is supported by their employers. In the industry survey that we conducted for our research, you as industry leaders said that you think that on-the-job experience, mentoring, and training are the most important ways for spa managers to gain the knowledge and skills that they need for their jobs. But only 2/3 of you said as companies you're actually providing any kind of in-house training for your spa management employees. Also, under just about half of the spa managers and directors we surveyed said that they wish their employers would provide more on-the-job training. And what we learned from our surveys about the on-the-job training that's going on right now is that most companies, when they do training for spa managers, it's done only for new employees, kind of a one-off thing when people first start their job. And only about 1/3 of spa managers are receiving any other kinds of training beyond that as they move onward in their careers. Also, the spa companies that are doing training are usually developing their own curriculum and doing a lot of it in-house. Very few of your businesses are taking advantage of the external training providers and the books and resources that are increasingly available out there. And also, very few spas are actually paying for their managers to take external training courses or take online training. So employee training is really going to be most effective if it's not a one-time thing or not an occasional thing, but when it's part of a really well-coordinated and proactive approach for developing talent and leadership and human resources in your business. And there's really, I think, a sense in the spa industry that spas are not generally investing enough time and resources into human resource development. In our interviews with industry leaders, we asked people to name companies that they thought were doing a good job in training and developing their spa managers. And some people could mention maybe 1 or 2 companies. Most people couldn't think of any. And most people even said they thought their own company is not doing a good job at this. So to give you a sense of the types of things I'm suggesting here, I've thrown some ideas up on the screen of some successful approaches that have been used in other industries, and there are more details about this in the report. But human resource development is a huge field of study on its own. There is a massive wealth of resources out there about different approaches that can be effective for developing your employees and your workforce. So this is really something that SPA businesses in the industry would benefit from investing in more time thinking about, researching, and pursuing, because this is really critical for developing a strong SPA management workforce and really developing a great workforce at all levels in the industry. So just to wrap up here, to address this talent gap in SPA management that we've been talking about, as I said at the beginning, all of the key players in the workforce system are going to need to work together more cooperatively and more proactively. There's really a huge amount of fragmentation surrounding this right now. So, industry people don't know what schools and training providers and resources are out there. Schools are finding it hard to connect with businesses and industry. There are a lot of training books, resources, credentials, like the iSPA programs that I talked about that have been developed over the last few years that the industry is not taking advantage of and not aware of. So just in general, the SPA industry is not supporting and developing the programs and resources that are already out there for SPA management education and training, much less working on addressing gaps and developing new resources. So in the report, which you all received, we listed out 20 very specific recommendations about things that can be done by the industry. I'm not going to go through all of those, but what I want to do to wrap up is really focus on 3 specific things that we think are most important first steps and most obvious first steps for the industry to address some of these problems. So if you do nothing else with this report, I would encourage you to at least think about these 3 things. The first, very simply, is to build awareness about the resources and programs that are already out there and work together as an industry to do this. You need to disseminate information about those SPA management degree programs I talked about, the continuing education providers, the books and training materials and resources and credentials, internship opportunities. All this information can be very easily disseminated on industry websites. A lot of the information is already provided in our report, so you have it there at your fingertips. If you personally are not familiar with these resources, go learn about them yourself, because this is the most important first step, because as an industry, how can you work on improving SPA management education and training if you don't even know what programs and resources already exist? The second recommendation is to really reach out to the universities and schools that are already doing SPA management training. You can do this as an industry, and you can also do this as an individual business, but you do need to be proactive about it. If there's a school on the list that's in our report you see that's in your local region or in your country, call them up. We talked to a lot of educators when we were doing our research. All of them work really hard to develop contacts in industry, but universally they all said they would love to hear from more businesses. So really think about how you can connect with them and partner with them. Also, as an industry, you can think about reaching out to those schools out there that don't have SPA management related training. Try to educate them about the growth and opportunities in the industry and see if you can get more programs to develop. And then our third recommendation is to, within your own business, think really hard about how you can be more proactive in supporting your employees as they move through their career. How can your business provide more training? Can you work on being more proactive at succession planning so that people are prepared to move up from therapist to management jobs? Can you develop more internship programs or management trainee programs so that students and university graduates have good opportunities to build those practical skills and experience? Can you raise the bar for the credentials and the requirements you have when you hire SPA managers? Start seeking out the graduates of these SPA management degree programs. Start encouraging your managers to get outside training and credentials and pay for them to do this. It's actually not that costly to pay for. But really, all of these programs, the degrees, the continuing education, the resources, they're not going to grow and flourish, and you're not going to see more develop until there's more demand in the industry for these resources for SPA managers. So really, it's the people and the companies who are here at the summit and here in the room who should be leading the way and leading the charge in this area, setting the best practice examples for how to grow talented employees, how to make skills and people a number one priority in your business. So along the theme of the summit, I encourage you to be innovators in this area and to think about how you can pursue some of these activities and really start making a difference in the workforce. And I think that we probably have like 3 or 4 minutes for questions. So I'd like to hear if anybody has any questions or comments. Sure. I don't know if there's a microphone out there. If not, I guess just speak up loudly.
Well, I was just wondering, on the numbers that you showed, that there were 130,000 to 180,000 current managers and 4,000 students. Do you have anything that shows what the replacement rate is, or how quickly, how much turnover there is in the industry, and how quickly we need to replace managers?
No, we actually weren't able to get that detailed into the statistics. I mean, those were rough estimates, but what we looked at, and there's a little bit more detail in the report, but if we say, okay, that big 130 to 180,000 number, some percentage of those people are going to retire or move on every year, and you're going to need to replace them. You also have a replacement growth rate that you need to deal with. And the 4,000 students, that's actually not even the number of people graduating. That's just the number of people enrolled. So we can say that somewhere to a third to 1/4 of those are actually graduating each year. So, I mean, the gap's so wide that the details and the numbers almost don't even matter, because it's just to just show the magnitude of the gap. So, sure, over here.
Thank you for a great report.
Thanks. And we had a great panel discussion about this yesterday with a lot of people in the room, I think, who are really committed to this issue, and there's a lot of excitement about people getting involved. And I think Anna already has some ideas of some activities to work on. So I'd encourage you to, if you're interested in working more on this issue, please talk to Anna, because I think she's has volunteered kindly to lead the way on some of these things. So, any other questions? Oh, was there one more? Oh, sure, yes. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, really, this is one piece of the puzzle. And when you think about workforce, you have to think about that entire progression. And those other positions in the SPA are just as essential as these, and have, I think, just as many challenges and issues in the training and the career pathways. And it all needs to work together. And so, actually, a lot of the things and the recommendations we've made in the report, we did say, I think, apply across the board to all levels of positions, not just managers. But if we tried to focus on the other piece, it would have been, twice as long. So we had to start somewhere. Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, back here.
One thing that's really puzzled me from the past 5 years in the spa industry is that the schools are actually not really making contact with the businesses. And I know from going to business school that the value of business school is 50% at least the opportunity that you will have to meet with your future employers. And I haven't really seen that in the schools, in the spa industry. So I was wondering if I was missing something, or if it's something that's missing from schools.
I think there's a lot of misperception about that on both sides. Most of the schools that we talk to, and especially the ones we profiled in the report, are doing the best job they can reaching out to industry. A lot of them do participate in industry events. A lot of the outreach that the schools are able to do often tends to be in their local region, because that's the most obvious place to start, especially when they're trying to place student interns and have mentoring and things like that. It's easiest to deal with businesses in a closer geographic proximity. The schools we talk to who are trying to place interns internationally say it's much harder to make those contacts, but they're working on it. But you may not have heard about it, because again, that's maybe one person at one school trying to reach out and do this. And so that's why I say that communication needs to go both ways. And as a business, call them up. They would love to hear from you. It's very easy to do that. And maybe you can be a guest speaker for them. Maybe you can offer to be a mentor, offer an internship. There's so many things as a business you can do to support these programs and support the training for the students. And so again, it's a two-way channel that really needs to be worked on.
So there are a lot of academic leaders in the room.